Welcome to Culture Over Coffee, a podcast focused on improving company culture and fostering employee engagement. Every week, we chat with experts and thought leaders about the latest proven practices to reduce regrettable turnover, increase productivity, and retain key customers. So pour a cup of your favorite brew and join us. I'm your host, Beth Sunshine, SVP at Up Your Culture. For many employees, culture is a major reason they say yes to a job offer. But too often, the reality doesn't live up to the pitch. In this episode, I'm joined by Deborah Fulghum, Employee Engagement Specialist and Culture Coach at Up Your Culture, to unpack what happens when the promised culture falls short of expectations and how organizations can fix it. Deb offers such great insights like why too many organizations use company culture as a marketing tool without doing the actual work of establishing a solid culture foundation, how too many managers think of onboarding as a job solely for HR, and how people join a company but leave a manager, often because they feel as though their manager doesn't really care about them. Deb, it is so great to have you on this show. I know we work together every day and really have a passion for guiding organizations as they create a thriving workplace, but we never really get the opportunity just to sit down and have a conversation like this. So thank you for joining me.
Well, I'm excited. This is one of my favorite topics, so thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, you're perfect for it. As an engagement specialist and culture coach, you've been in the trenches with leaders and managers navigating what I would consider culture gaps for a while. I think your perspective is really going to resonate with people. So I'll just jump into the first question if that works for you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're talking about Engage 2025 and all of the findings, some of them not so surprising, some of them pretty eye-opening. One thing that stood out to me is that nearly 6 in 10 people accepted their job because of the culture. So that was the calling in many cases, yet many now feel disengaged and some reported they're actively looking to leave. So I'm wondering from your perspective, what do you think is going on, behind the scenes? What's causing this disconnect between the culture and the employees, what they are envisioning or what they feel they were promised? And, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, it's interesting because we were seeing with engagement surveys previously that between the beginning of a job and 1 year, people were really engaged. And recent studies, when we've been looking at a couple of the survey companies we work with, we're seeing that start to go at 6 months. People are starting to become disengaged. So it's happening faster than it used to. So it's starting to be a trend that's not good that we do need to reverse. Mm-hmm. I have seen a couple people that, want to maybe jump on the bandwagon of culture being a topic. So sometimes they over-promote it, over-market their culture as being something to think that's what people want to hear, as opposed to being truthful. It's almost framed as a selling point. But, when they get in, they find that what they were sold was not actually true. And they find that out pretty quickly. So they may expect one experience, but what they experience is something different. Yeah. And so we're seeing that to be true a lot. Also, core values. We talk about core values all the time. I mean, we know how important they are to us at our company. But if we talk about how important collaboration is in an interview, and then as soon as someone starts, they're by themselves. We don't even put them with other people. We don't put them in collaborative environments. Then did we just sell them false promises? And I think that really is a big deal. And that inconsistency in what we talk about in an interview and what we live, we need to be aware of that. People want to hear the truth. Not all cultures are great. And even cultures that are great still have work to do. And it's okay to say, we have a great culture. There's things we could get better at. And we're always aware of that. When we do that, think of our employee engagement surveys that we do annually. We look at those and we think, how do we get better? And we have a great culture, but we still look at that.
So do you think that this disconnect is intentional? You use the word marketing, so I'll use it as well. Do you think that culture is being used as a marketing tool intentionally, or do you think that companies maybe are lacking some self-awareness? Maybe, they're just unclear on the gap between how they are perceiving things or the message they're putting out there and what is happening in the building or in the company?
I think it can be both, don't you think? I mean, I think sometimes we get excited and think this is what they want to hear. What are you looking for? And then we say, oh, we're that. So we can do that sometimes on purpose, think because we really love a candidate, we want them to come. But, the point you just made, I think is a good one, is there is a disconnect. And we saw this in Engage report that what is happening on top lines isn't transmitting down low. So someone who's interviewing as a manager, a hiring manager, you may be really engaged and believe it's a certain way because your peers are that way. But people below you may not be resonating with that same story. So it may not be intentional. But I do think being honest about the good and the bad is really important in an interview. Yeah. I think people want to know, tell me the truth, because right away, it's a perfect opportunity to start building that trust. And we know how long that takes. So, really even thinking about onboarding, how we're going to make sure that we live up to what we say we are. We have to think what we say, people are listening and taking.
Yeah. We talk a lot, you and I and the rest of our team, when we're working with clients about how things like core values can't be aspirational. They can't describe what you want to be, what you're working towards. They have to really be what you value today, what you're taking action on today. And we have both seen examples of that go awry, where the company has landed on core values that they really want to describe who they are, and yet that doesn't really describe who they are yet. So I'm kind of reflecting on that. We specifically had a client meeting yesterday that made me think about that. You make a really good point. I also know one of the things that we just intuitively know, but we hear all the time too, is that new employees, all employees, really want to be developed. They want to know that when they're joining an organization, they know who the organization is. They're clear on that. They weren't sold a bill of goods, but also that they are going to be invested in while they're there. It's sort of an exchange. I'll give you my time and my talents, and in return, I want to be developed and grow. The report shows that only 13%, I had to read that more than once, only 13% of new hires feel as though their development is a priority. I would imagine during those interviews, they probably were told it was.
Right.
But only 13% actually, after being hired, feel like their development's a priority. So how does that happen? Is it poor onboarding? Is it maybe a company over-promising and under-delivering? Where is that bubbling up from?
Probably both, as you say. I think we even talk about onboarding, pre-boarding, onboarding. Mm-hmm. We talk about all that and how vitally important that is to engage somebody before they even walk in the door. But so often, it depends on managers and their natural talents and gifts too, because if a manager is someone who just is a checklist person, then they're just following that onboarding checklist as opposed to developing the relationship. And I think the relationship piece needs to come first or rise to the top of that checklist. The checklist is your guide, but that relationship needs to develop. I think so often companies think, well, the paperwork, we focus on paperwork or systems, all these things to help you. That's part of our onboarding. But if we focus on what do you want? How do you want to grow? How do you want to contribute to this company? That connection makes somebody feel valued right away. It makes me think, and this will rise to the top for you. Do you remember when we were working with a client who shared they had a growth guide conversation? And a growth guide is such a great way to have a conversation to uncover what somebody wants, where they want to grow. how they want to develop, how they learn, so much about that. But I remember we had a manager share a story that they put the growth guide in their onboarding at the very beginning of their onboarding. And the employee said, wow, you told me about your culture.
I do remember that.
You told me that it was going to be different. And I have never experienced where somebody immediately wanted to know what I wanted and how I wanted to contribute to a company. So what you told me was true in the interview, right? So if we do that, we follow through and we put that relationship first, so many great things can happen.
I agree. And what a good example of doing, like, walking the walk, not just talking the talk, right? Not only saying we develop our people, but building that growth guide in. And for listeners who maybe don't know what a growth guide is, we've got lots of references in the blog on it. It's just a wonderful list of questions that help a manager uncover what drives an individual and, how they want to grow and how they want help from their manager when they're struggling. It just sort of makes everything really transparent. And you're exactly right. Someone joins a company and they're having that growth guide conversation, and then it's super clear they really do invest in their people. I'm so glad you remembered that and brought that up.
I think too, it's so often that in some companies, managers think that onboarding isn't their job. It's HR's job.
Right.
And we need to get out of that, because this person's not going to be reporting to HR. They're going to be reporting to you. And they need that relationship with you. They need to know you care about them and their success and their future. And they want to know, when we're finding this too, across 2 different engagement survey companies right now, that people want to know what the future looks like and how they're a part of that and how you're going to help me develop me to get me to be part of that.
That's right.
It all works so well together, but so much of this is communication and being transparent with people about what we will do to help you, and then doing it. We have to be actionable. Taking action is a big deal.
Yeah. So you've talked about pre-boarding and onboarding. You've talked about developing your people. You've talked about transparency. I mean, so many really important topics. And maybe some of those are behind what I'm about to ask you. Maybe there's more. But the report also showed that 50% of brand new employees are already reporting that they're feeling somewhat engaged or worse. Some of them even disengaged. So why are companies losing the engagement, the attention of their new employees so quickly? And I mean, is there something that can happen in those first 90 days that maybe would reinforce trust? You said it takes a long time to build. Is there a way to speed that up, or something we can do to create a sense of belonging so they don't check out so fast?
Yeah, I think so. Going back to relationships, I think that's a big deal, not just with a manager, but with coworkers. So assigning a work buddy, we talk about that's part of a great onboarding, is giving them someone that they can talk to and ask questions of and feel like they have a friend. We work with one engagement survey company that one of the questions is, I have a friend at work. So that's monumentally important to people, feeling a connection to someone else. So relationships aren't just manager, it's also peer-to-peer. And that's a big deal. So I think if you notice someone's quiet or not hanging with other people, we need to check in really quickly and take that as a red flag that maybe we need to step in and say, what's going on? How are things going? What do you like? What are your concerns? I think we also have to have discussions about their goals. And if, back to, we were talking about this earlier, if we talk about collaboration in an interview, we need to show a culture that is that. Mm-hmm. So we really need to follow through, not just have the words on the wall. But if we're talking about relationships, there should be collaboration involved. So are we having that? Are we including them, involving them in a project that, if we've had that conversation about what their interests are, that maybe it's not part of our initial onboarding, but we had thought you might like this, and we include them in that. Another piece, and we talk about this often, is feedback. I think feedback is key. You have to know that you're on the right path. You have to know, if you set some milestones along the way, that you're going in the right direction. And feedback gives clarity to that. Here's what you're doing well. Here's what you should do more of. But people don't know unless you tell them. You can't assume they know they're doing a good job. And if we want people to feel that right away, why not start with that even after the first day? What went well? What did you like? What do you want to do more of? And having those conversations consistently, especially in that first 90 days, I think is very important.
You mentioned red flags and shared some good stuff with us. I do want to just probe a little bit deeper because I'm really interested in maybe giving our listeners some things they can specifically look for. So I wonder if there are other early red flags that managers may see, leaders may see, that tell them that an employee may be feeling that bait and switch. Like, I don't know if this company is what I thought it was. I don't know if I made the right decision. So are there a handful of red flags people can look for? And then maybe when they see those red flags, do you have anything that we can specifically do to address those issues before it's too late? I imagine as soon as someone starts feeling that way, they're back on LinkedIn, just kind of looking at what else is still out there. My resume is still on some other people's desks. So maybe how do we make sure we catch that?
Yeah, I think the quiet part is a big deal. I think frequent check-ins are a good way to check on that. If people are quiet, we need to ask, tell me what you like today. Tell me what your concerns are. We need to ask, do they have concerns? Instead of saying, do you have any questions for me? I mean, that's too broad. And people would know. If we ask, what didn't feel good today? What would make you feel better? If we have those type of discussions, we can pay attention to that. If they're not involved with other people, if they're keeping to themselves, if we're not seeing activity like we would, and if we're just giving them a checklist and saying, where are you on this? Then we're not doing our jobs. And I think so much of what your question is asking comes down to managers. I think some managers aren't equipped with knowing how to pay attention to the signs. And, I'll say this too. I find sometimes if people are doing something and involved, we think, oh, they really like this and they're engaged. But so we give them more work and we reward their behavior with more work. And then people say, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for all this work. This isn't what you told me was going to happen. And you're giving me more than what I anticipated or what you're paying me to do. And we think we're giving them we're saying you're doing a good job by giving them something. And we need to be aware of that. We need to have those conversations and ask, is this something you have interest in? Not just assume they will, but would you like involvement? If they're not saying they want to be involved, I think that's a red flag. I think we have to pay attention to some of that. If we talk about our culture, being peer-to-peer, are they involving themselves with peers? Are they trying to work with other people? Are they collaborating with other people? I think we just have to keep our radar on that. But I don't think managers are doing enough check-ins with people. I think asking questions at the beginning of a day and at the end of the day. What are you excited about? What concerned you today? What are you leaving today feeling energized by? What's depleting you? Let's talk about that. I think that's a good start.
That's a great tactic to recommend for someone who's new, having those built-in check-ins, beginning of the day, end of the day, however long, that feels right, then maybe dropping one of those. And I love the message you're sharing, which is ask them how they're doing, how they're feeling, what they're liking, what they're not liking. I think there's so much great insight there.
We say this often that people don't leave a company, they leave a manager.
Right.
So the number one reason people leave is because they feel a manager doesn't care about them.
Right.
So right away, going back to relationships, what a great way to show you're important to me. Not only do I want you here, but I care about you as a person and I want you to be successful and I'm going to set you up for success and I'm going to help you get there.
Yeah, that's right. What better way is there to show caring than to spend a few minutes, spend some time, ask questions, learn, and then apply what you learn? I think you're spot on. So for leaders who may be listening today and they're hearing you and they're thinking about how, they want to maybe rebuild trust. They want to realign the experience that their employees have so that it matches what they're being told during the recruitment and selection process. What is one powerful step that you would lead people with? Something that they could maybe take away today and start using right away to close that gap?
Yeah, I think I think it's important if we're a fast-paced environment, we need to say we're a fast-paced environment, but we don't want to say that. You can say something like we move quickly, we give people what they need, we want them to be comfortable, but this is what we do. We need to let them know this because we don't want to say, oh, we're a family, we're laid back, and then we throw them into that fire. Right. We need to be doing that. I also think stories, sharing stories, action, giving those real life examples of your core values. We say transparency, like with our company, integrity. I mean, if we talk about, let me tell you what that means here. Let me give you a story. I mean, we have powerful stories of integrity, some that I just love telling people over and over again, but it shows that really means something to me. It's not just a word, it's actionable, and I'm going to show you how we do it. And the thing is, if we ask questions in an interview to make sure that someone's aligning to our culture, they're going to bring their best. They're going to want to be part of that. So we need to be really aware of that. But I think we need to ask those questions. Do they want to be a part of that? This is who we are. We're not perfect. We've got a great culture, but when we say things like we're a family, what does that mean? That can mean different things to different people. We need to be really, what does our family unit do? How do we act? And I think we just need to be clear about that and make sure that we're putting people in a successful situation to be able to know that what we told them and what is happening align.
I love that emphasis on clarity. I know when we've done interviews before in our department, we've often, I think probably every time, had job candidates who we're pretty serious about meet with groups of us, like 2 or 3 of their coworkers at a time. And, what we try to do on our team is talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and make sure we share, what do we love? What makes us feel so good about our job? What can be challenging? And what is something you need to know because it's going to be a fact of life? I've always really liked that practice of ours because there are no surprises. People join with their eyes wide open. The ugly that I usually share is in this role, you're often chained to your desk a little more than you might think. It's a virtual job. You work remotely. Yes, you make your own hours. There's so much good to that, but you want to know what the bad is? The bad is our clients love us and we are really busy and you're not going to be able to do that load of laundry that you were planning on doing. And if you've never worked from home before, you need to know that. So I love that message of just clarity and transparency and just no surprises.
Yeah, I agree. And the beautiful thing too about involving other people on the team is you get points of view from everybody.
Right.
So it's not just from the manager's point of view, it's coworkers and the coworkers are, I'll use the sniff test. They're trying to see, is this person going to align to our team and our culture? Because people can feel that. They can feel someone's core values instinctively, intuitively. Do they align to who we are as a team? Are they going to make our team better? That's what people want. They want somebody who is going to help us get that boat across the lake, right? We want somebody who's going to grab a paddle, jump in, and go at it with us. And they're not going to work against us. So having those conversations, I think, is really important.
I agree. And what a good point of view. You're getting insight from those who are doing the interviews on the candidate, and then the candidate's getting a better sense for who you are as a company by meeting the people that you've hired in the past. I love it.
The personalities are such a big deal. And I will say, I do feel like our company, we work very cohesively. We have that family vibe. One of my favorite things is we have a new employee in our company that's been here about a month. And I noticed she said something the other day. She said, I've always wanted to work here, always. But I was wondering, was the culture real? And it is. And for her to say that and to say, I love it here. I mean, that's a goosebump moment. And to know that what we say and what we do align. And that's a really important aspect.
Yeah. I love that. It's not like the Wizard of Oz pulling the curtain aside. It's actually who we are. Great point. Great point to end on. I want to thank you, Deb, for unpacking what happens when culture can sometimes become more marketing than meaning, and for sharing your wisdom and your passion with us. Always love talking with you. So thank you. And then for those who want to connect with Deb, we are going to put her information in the show notes so that you can connect on LinkedIn, follow her. She does really cool posts that I think you'll find insightful, and then you can connect. We'll also put the link to the Full Engage 2025 report in there so you can dig in deeper. So thank you, Deb, and thank you for everyone who is listening and working to up your culture. Thanks so much for spending time with us on Culture Over Coffee. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to subscribe and join us for every episode. For more helpful information about company culture and employee engagement, visit us at upyourculture.com.